Hello everyone, welcome back to Painting Crafty, and today I'm going to be painting and creating this pretty little mixed media piece on a piece of scrap lumber that I've had in my studio for a while. The lumber size is considered a 2x6, even though it's not 2 and it's not a 6. I don't understand the dimension of lumber, but that's what this size is, and I love using this size because you can set it down on a shelf. You don't have to use an easel. It's going to stand up by itself. It's got a nice wide base to be able to paint on, so you've got plenty of room to create, and of course you can make it as long or short as you want. So if you ever come across this lumber in a scrap pile, or if you use some, make sure you set some aside because you can create something fun out of this size of lumber. Today I'm a part of a YouTube collaboration. It's the What Would You Make collaboration. It's a monthly collaboration. We have two hosts for this event. We have Brenda at Rustic and Lace DIY, Christine with Divine Design, and one guest host, Katie, with Lady Red Crafting. Now you're going to find the links to their channels inside of my description box, as well as a playlist of all the other videos that have been contributed. All have to do with something with creating with wood. Well, let's get started. I'm hoping to inspire you that if you come across your scrap wood and it's a 2x6, you're going to keep it. And if you can dash and plop paint, spray it with a little bit of water, and add some creative line work, you too could come up with something as pretty as this mixed media piece. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to show you the steps. The first step I'm going to do is give my board a sanding and then dust it off. I'm not going to seal this. I'm going to be painting right on the raw wood. I'm going to be using some deco art colors today. The red is Tuscan red. My orange is bright orange. The blue is Bahama blue, and my green is citron green. Now I'm going to use two colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. The red and the orange are sitting next to each other. I don't have to worry about these colors mixing and making mud. It's the other two colors when I add on top, the blue and the green, which are complementary to those two colors. Now those could make mud if I get them over mixed together. So I'm going to be applying these with a palette knife, which is a metal knife that has some bend to it, and I'm going to kind of skate that color of the red and the orange over each other. I'm pulling a little bit tighter to my wood. You can kind of see the grain popping through there. That shows you how much pressure I'm kind of going with this. But to break up my stripy patterns, because of my knife of how I'm putting my colors on, I'm going to use just a simple bubble wrap to go ahead and pop in a little bit more texture. I don't have to cover it all with these colors, and before I put those next colors on, I need to wipe that red and the orange off my knife because, like I said, these next ones are the complementary colors to these ones, and if I overmix those colors, I'm going to end up with mud. So now I'm using a little lighter pressure. I'm putting that paint on my palette knife, and then I'm skating it across. You can kind of see how I'm picking up a little bit more texture. I'm lightly frosting my board. I still don't want a lot of texture on there, but I'm creating the texture by the pressure of my knife. I'm still going to use my bubble wrap and kind of tap it, so I'm breaking up the little bit of stripiness. In the end, you're not going to see a lot of this bolder color. It's going to be acting more of a background color to my piece and the edging. Give it a few more taps, and then I'm going to give this a chance to dry, and then I'm going to create the block in the middle where I'm going to be putting my flowers. The color I'm going to be using for my block color is called Desert Turquoise, and I want it to be a thin application of color or a light translucent color, so I'm going to be adding some water to thin down my paint, and I'm using a flat brush to be able to paint a rectangle in the middle. I'm going for a translucent color. I want this to still just be lightly covering that area so I can still see some of the color. It's going to change it because the blue is all over the top, but you're still going to know that there's those colorations underneath. I want this to also be a wet layer because we're going to be adding the flower shapes on top using a dabber technique. I'm going to add a little bit of extra water using my little tiny mister bottle to add a little bit more water. And then I'm going to be using my little finger daubers that you use for inking. These ones are wore out, and I'm going to use those for the dotting dabber look. I'm going to load my dauber with some paint. And once I have it loaded, I'm going to dab it on there. What I'm trying to create is more of a splat look. So when you hit the paint, it should splat. I didn't have enough water on my dabber, so I went ahead and I added some more water onto the sponge end, reloaded my dauber, and gave it another whack. It still wasn't quite spreading right, so I took this mister and I actually sprayed my dots a little bit. About the third time I did it, or the fourth time I did it, I finally had enough water on my dauber and it made the paint go splat. I want that look of the splatting look, kind of that uncontrollable look. That's going to blend out and be a soft looking technique in the end. So I'm going to have some thicker, some lighter, some brighter, and that splat look in the background. This is the fun step. Not a lot of technique in this. Just go ahead and give it a whack. Once that last step is finished, you're going to need to give your piece a nice dry. You want your paint to be really fairly dry on this step. Now you can see how that splat looks in the background and how my colors ran a little bit. That's the look I'm going for. Now I'm coming back in with a little bit more of that desert turquoise, and I want to re-emphasize my edges just a little bit. I want to bring back some of that brightness. Because we use so much water, that is going to change the look of your paint. So I'm coming back in and just lightly brushing some more of that turquoise color into that background. The next step I'm going to do is create some dark lines on my piece. I'm going to be using the Stabilo Marks All pencil. It's a water-soluble pencil, so that means it's going to move around with water or some sort of wet medium. I'm going to be using a little bit of the Liquitex matte medium to go ahead and reactivate this pencil. It goes on like a watercolor pencil or a wax pencil, but when you add some liquid to it, it creates these beautiful creamy black lines, and it's perfect for adding that rich quality to any mixed media piece. I'm also going to use it on the edge to try to create a little bit of a border. So I'm using the side of my pencil and going around the edge. And then I'm going to take some of that Liquitex again, the matte medium, and add it to the edge and blend out the black. Edging it in black is working perfect for this piece, especially because I'm going to be painting the edges and the back with a watered down black paint. If you get a little bit too much of it on and you want to remove it, all you have to do is take a paper towel and go ahead and rub your edges. With mixed media, there really isn't any mistakes. You just do what makes you feel happy. Now to make the stems for my flowers, I'm going to be taking some black paint and watering it down, and I'm going to be using a small liner brush for this step. Now if you feel more comfortable using a paint pen or some sort of pencil, you could use that as well. But this little liner brush works perfect as long as you thin down your paint, kind of make it a little bit puddly, and then roll your brush and turn it as you're going through your paint. And that's just going to load that paint nicely on that thin brush. Now when I do the stems, I want to think about the ones on the right. The stems are going to kind of curve in and go towards the left. The ones on the left, my stems are going to curve and bend to the right. That's going to give it a nice composition if you have those stems coming into each other. I do go back in and add just a few more longer lines and even add a few extra ones. When you're using the liner brush, the more pressure you put on your liner brush, the thicker your line is going to be. The less pressure, that's going to make your thin lines. I do come back in and add even more interest to these stems, so this is just the beginning step. The next step I'm going to do is make these blobby shapes into more of feeling more like a flower and adding definition to them. But I'm going to be using my stylus tool to create this textured type of look. A stylus tool works great for this because the metal ball tips add just little tiny dots of paint in there. I'm going to be using the same colors, the Tuscan red and the bright orange to the top. I'm going to be adding some black dots to the bottom just to give it a little bit more dimension. And then I thought perhaps adding a little bit of yellow gold color into there might look really nice. So I just had some Apple Barrel King's Gold sitting on my desk. So that is the gold color I used to create the little gold dots on the top. This step is just all about being creative and whimsical. It doesn't have to look like anything in particular. I'm not even going to be creating petals for this flower. I'm just going to be doing some dots, and then I'm going to show you a little bit of a scribbling technique on top to add even a little bit more interest to these flowers. The next step I wanted to show you is how I added some more creative line work using colored pencils. I'm using the Prismacolor pencils for this. Now this set isn't a premium or anything like that, it's just a set that I bought at Walmart, but Prismacolor even has beautiful colors even in those basic sets that you can purchase. Colored pencils are great to use in mixed media pieces. They're still considered a slightly water-soluble product, so you're going to have to be a little careful when you seal over the top of them, but you can get some very nice blended looks of color even over acrylic paint. I added little caps to my flowers using my black colored pencil, but then I went in and used my Stabilo pencil to even add more darkness to my background. The middle part of my picture looks too much like the outside and is too even all the way around. So to help create even more dimension back there, I scribbled a little bit of the Stabilo pencil, added some of the matte medium over the pencil to make it more moist and to move that dark color around, and that's going to add the rich dark character from behind there, giving you an illusion of that these little flowers have more than just one background. It's going to look like it's going back even farther. It's kind of a dance in between adding color, taking color away, and adding even more depth. Like I said earlier, there's really no mistakes, and a lot of this is acrylic paint, so the grace you get with acrylic paint is that you can always add another layer. Just let it dry, and then you can add another layer on. And if you need to add a complete layer over everything, like you want to lock all your colors down and you don't want them to move anymore, do a complete layer of the matte medium over your whole thing. Lock your colors down, and then when that dries, you can add a whole nother layer. So there's some workability even if you're using water-soluble items. I've shared with you some of my favorite mixed media pencils, and now this is another one that is my favorite, is the China marker, and I like using the white China marker on my items. Now my back piece is fairly dry already, and I'm going to be taking my white China marker and creating more of a detailed kind of a flower. Even though it's more of a doodle style, it's just a shape. Basically, you start with a U and then you make a dot on each end, and then you make some wispy lines in the middle, more of that U shape to create this almost like a Queen Anne's type of a look. It's just a doodle flower, it's not a real one, and I love to do doodle flowers. So I decided to make 3 that were in the center, and I made them the white China marker pencil first, but then to add just a little bit more color over the top of it, I used my color pencil and I added a bright shade of green over the top of the white and a little bit of that blue, that little turquoise blue, over that color. So by bringing the white on first, those colored pencils are going to stand out. Because my background is a little darker now, if I just put those colored pencils, the blue and the green, right on my background, they're not going to show up that much. So by bringing this little bit of white, by using my China marker first, that's going to help bring those items back out to the front. It's little steps like that that help bring your pieces together and help develop it. I didn't really know I was going to be adding those white flowers onto my picture when I first started, but I realized I wanted to add another depth or another layer, and this is a way I can do it, is by adding that little bit of white first and then layering my colors on the top. The next step, I wanted to add more depth to those background flowers, and I'm going to create little scribbly bits using my colored pencils. I was going to be using a rose color and then a lighter shade of pink. The texture shape I was going to be doing was more of a scribble technique, and I was going to be going on the painted part and going past my flower shape. That's going to add a little bit more airiness to these pieces and loosen them up a little bit so they're not just all concentrated right as a tiny little ball. So I'm adding some scribbles into the middle and going past, and I'm going to do the rose colored first, and then I'm going to be starting the light pink. Both colors are very subtle, but they make a difference in the flowers. Colored pencils have some unique characteristics as well. It works with the amount of pressure you put on your pencil, determines the color brightness or the darkness. They are made of wax, so the harder you push, the darker or more intense your color is going to be. But the more color you put on, the less you're going to be able to put on top. So in order to get the depth or the variety of colors, start with light pressure with your colored pencils and then increase your pressure to intensify the colors. If you would like to own a copy of this piece of artwork, I do have digital forms available in my Ko-fi shop, and I'll put a link down in the description. I decided to go ahead and throw in just a tish bit of purple with my colored pencil. This is great for adding little hash marks or little tick marks, little X's, O's, whatever it might be. The pencils work great for that. I had added a little bit more Stabilo pencil to my edges and on my stems as well, and I took the mister bottle and just sprayed my whole piece, and I wanted to create some drips. So I sprayed it and then turned it up just a little bit to get that runny, drippy look. To settle some of the drips down, you can always use a little paper towel and dab it if you get too much dripping action. I did get a little bit too much water at the bottom and had a large dark area, so I was able to go ahead and pick up any of the extra bits with some paper towel. Once I gave my piece a dry, I added a little bit more colored pencil around the edges. Now this next step I'm going to do might seem a little odd, but I loved instant coffee stain. I love the great yellow amber look it has. I take 1 tablespoon of the instant coffee and mix it into 1 cup of warm water. I usually have some of this sitting on my desk. I keep it in the refrigerator. It lasts a fair amount of time. I'm just taking a soft brush and then running some of that instant coffee around to mellow some of those colors. I didn't want the bright colors to be super overpowering, so I wanted to soften that with a little bit of that amber glow. Now you can do that with anything you like to add age to your piece with. Now on to the next layer of details, and I wanted to add some non-legible script to my piece. Non-legible script is basically an artistic way of doing handwriting. You're not intentionally writing so words that you would be able to read, but you are going to have letters or parts or fragments of words that you're going to be able to see. But the majority of it is just an artistic cursive type of style of writing. The tool I'm using to create this is a small little plastic bottle with a metal tip edge on it that's super small, and I fill it with, the majority is paint, maybe about, just a very top is maybe just a little bit of water. You want it to be thinned down so it can come through the tip, but not too thin where your lettering is going to just flatten all the way out. Once I have written my script, I want to go ahead and soften it just a little bit. I'm also adding a few little extra details at the top, adding some circles, a few little hash marks, just some little fun details of sparkle of white. But before this lettering has a chance to dry, or these little letter details, I want to go ahead and soften it back just a little bit. My piece was completely dry. I had dried it before I had done the lettering, but I needed to soften the letters, and what I was going to use is a paper that is used for when you're painting your house and you want to cover up your trim. It's a painter's paper. It's a thin brown stock of paper, and it works great for this process. You just basically put it over, give it a nice soft rub, and then pick it up, and you're going to just soften that lettering ever so softly. You could also use copy paper, just a thin paper, even a book paper if that's what you have. To finish my piece off, I was going to be using some black watered down paint. I put it on the sides and the back. I think I only did 1 layer on this, but you could easily do 2. By having the black edge pencil and then bringing the black paint on the edges, it really does finish it off nicely. For the varnishing step, I'm going to be using a layer of the Liquitex High Gloss. I like using high gloss first because it just brings the colors to life. And then once I have that on, I put 2 coats of the matte varnish on top. And then that kind of dulls the gloss down, but still makes it look alive. I love doing that step of glossy first and then 2 layers of matte. Well, let's see what it looks like sitting in my studio. I wanted to say a special thank you to our host today, and check out that playlist to see all the other videos included for today's collaboration. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. If you enjoyed watching this video, here's a couple more you might want to check out. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up if you learned something new today. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and see me again. And next time, perhaps you'll create right along with me.